This is Excalibur Heavy Battle Cruiser, and today we're doing a Nova Drift music tier list. Judgment Day has arrived for Miles Tillman. Now, these icons are not official. I made them myself in Photoshop, and yeah, it's pretty obvious that they aren't of the best quality, but I guess it makes do, for now at least. Now, if you're familiar with the system of tier lists, S tier is the best, F tier is the worst, C tier is the middle ground, and that's pretty much it. There may be the slight subsystem of things that are closer to the actual letter being better than the ones that are farther apart from the letter, if it's on the same tier. Now, for the ranking itself, I am going to be selecting them based on which track shows up first in the downloadable version of the Nova Drift soundtrack. Like, Miles Tillman has a list of them, has a playlist, and I'll be ranking them according to which track shows up first on the playlist. So that way, it mimics as if someone is actually listening to the playlist. And I really do recommend checking it out because even if not all of the songs are S tier, many of them are. And I really do like him a lot. I really do like the songs a lot, so be sure to check them out. And if you also want to give your opinion on them, the link for this tier list is in the description below. With that being said, let's get started with Never End. Okay, getting some build up. Yeah, it does take like over 40 seconds for it to really build up, but now it's getting good. These beats are pretty cool. And it does repeat for a while. Oh yeah, this is where things get interesting. Not too sure how to feel about this one. Yeah, it's a little repetitive around here. It does take some time to get back into the more interesting parts. Now it's getting there. Oh yeah, that sounds really cool. Yeah, like the latter parts of the song really has some interesting stuff going on in it, and for that reason, I may actually rank the regular version of Never End on high B tier, borderline A tier, because this thing is a pretty solid start to the non-wild version of Nova Drift. Next up, we have Slow Burn. starting off kind of somber. This is where the song starts to get really good. Now we've entered the meat of the song. Oh yes, now we're really getting good with this. Yeah, the synth beats are really satisfying here. But it does start to get a bit repetitive, and I think it does overstay its welcome a bit too much. Also, the ending is somewhat cool, but it's not quite the best. And for this reason, I think Slow Burn deserves a lower B tier, or maybe even a C tier. I'm gonna keep it at B tier. But it's not as good as Never End, unfortunately. Oh yeah, this one is a more immediate hook that invites you. Yeah, this is where it enters the main good part of the song. It did take a bit of a time to build up, like it had an enticing hook, and then some of the song was like a little repetitive, but still solid. It does build up and then it kind of falls off. Like, it's still not over though. The song still has some stuff left in it. It does take a fair while to build things back up. Like, if you hear really closely, you can barely... Like, now it's more audible. Like, there's some more instruments going on. So yeah, the second half kind of attempts to build to something, but then it also falls flat. Probably even less dramatically than the first half, where... So yeah, Blue Shift is also pretty solid. I'd say it's somewhere between Neverend and Slow Burn. But I'd say it's closer to Neverend's quality than Slow Burn's quality. Next up we have Rubidium. I gotta say, this song's beats are not quite as remarkable as the other ones so far. Okay, it's building up to something again. Yeah, the payoff is not that satisfying, if I'm gonna be honest. And then it's a slow fade as it quiets down and ends. Well, I'm sorry to say, but Rubidium is probably my first C tier. I'm not gonna place it in D tier. I think that's a bit harsh. But I'd say it's on the low end of C tier. I don't think it's quite solid for me, honestly. Now we have the first boss track in the game, Near Miss. I mean, it sounds pretty nice. It definitely is taking its time to build up, however. Okay, so this is a payoff, and gotta say it's nothing special, unfortunately. The song does get somewhat darker. Like, it does get a bit darker. And then it kind of ends off as well on a fade. Like, it's some more repetitive parts and then it ends off. And for that reason, I think Near Miss, I also have to give this C tier. I'm really sorry. It's better than Rubidium because there's the latter half having some sinister beats there, but it's not too sinister where it's super special. And overall, I don't think it's quite as good as some of the other boss music in the game. That bass drop is something else. Yeah, I do like the heavy bass drums over here. I will say it is also taking its time to build up. I do like the mini beats that are going on, like the rapid beats. I don't know what they're actually called. I don't know what instrument it's actually called, but I like those. And just as I think they're about to overstay their welcome, the song switches modes, and it enters a breakdown of sorts. Now the song really quietens down, and I mean, it's not the end of the song yet. It's still loudening up again. Now we're getting some interesting beats again. It almost sounds a little sinister at the end. And then it's once again a slow whispering fade off. I actually kind of like Collider. Like the first half, like the first initial beats were really good actually, and then it kind of fell off, and then it again started to get a bit interesting, but it does have some flaws. Despite that, however, the beat drop was just really good, and the initial beats were just good enough for me to place it on A tier. Unlike the other songs, things are already getting pretty interesting here. Definitely feeling the build-up. It does get somewhat repetitive, but I still like the energy that this song has coursing through its veins. Like, I can really imagine driving a fast car and listening to this song. Like, it sounds like the kind of song that you would hear on a racetrack. But it's not like a violent racetrack where you're like having to compete with other people. You're just racing by yourself and trying to do a time attack or something like that. Oh yeah, the beats are also getting pretty interesting. I really like the fast-paced vibe of the song. And yeah, there are some pretty interesting beats going around at the 60% to 75% of the song. It's getting interesting again. It's suddenly entering a breakdown phase again since it's slowing down. And then it also does the fading down and ending thing. And yeah, I actually like Super Lumen as well. The song has a pretty awesome fast-paced theme, and it just sounds pretty cool. I'll put it alongside Collider. Its highs are not quite as high as Collider, but I do think it's more consistently good. Next up, we enter one of the fan favorites of the Nova Drift community. If you know the song, you know why it's a banger. The ominous vibes of the first few seconds are probably unmatched by any other song in the game. Definitely sensing the build-up. It's really got a creepy, mysterious build-up. And the build and the payoff is really good. Like, this may be the peak of the song. I'm legit getting goosebumps from this. Also, if you're wondering why you're hearing some chewing sounds, I'm eating apples right now. And yeah, the beats are really good. Unfortunately, this is the part where I say the song falls off. And it's a rather unfortunate fall off in terms of quality and memorability. I still kind of like the ominous vibes of this. But it does turn into this drum instrument, which I don't really care for too much, honestly. It does get some more bass drums, but it doesn't really add too much, unfortunately. Yeah, the bass really increases, but it's still not enough to really salvage the second half of Freefall. Like, at this point, it just turns into bassy noise, unfortunately. And so, yeah, that's Freefall for you. The first half is amazing. It really is amazing. It's one of the best music tracks in the entire game. But the second half really holds this song back, because it really doesn't sound anything special. And in fact, I think it's a bit of a waste. Like you're wasting a full minute and a half, I think, on this part. It really is unfortunate because it was so close to being S tier. It may even be S tier, but I think it's low S tier right now. Just because of the underwhelming final second half of it. Now that apple is finished, there's still some more pieces, but let's move on to zeroed. It got some interesting build up, and like the first few seconds had some interesting beats to it. I'm definitely sensing the build up. I actually like this payoff quite a bit. That was getting pretty groovy there. And then the beats kind of start to overstay their welcome once again. And it's again a fade down send off thing again. With zero, the first few seconds were very solid, and there were some satisfying payoffs. And in general, the beats were actually decent, but it wasn't exceptional, unfortunately. Which means I'm gonna place it on B tier. It's somewhere between Blue Shift and Slow Burn in terms of quality. I'm really not sure about where it actually belongs, quality-wise, between these two, but let's say it's a fair ranking. Next up we have Singular. Whenever this song shows up, you know you have a gigantic black hole that's just sucking in everything. And you have to press down the trust button, otherwise you take massive damage. Now the unfortunate thing about this song is that a good chunk of the time, you don't really hear all too much of it. The singularity passes through rather quickly. I mean, relative to how long the song is, most of the time you really don't hear the full song. I like the ominous themes with this one as well. It is very fitting because a black hole does need to be very ominous. Because it's a freaking black hole. Nothing can escape from it, not even light. Unfortunately, in Nova Drift, its physics isn't quite perfect. You can't actually escape from it. But it is still a force of nature that you gotta avoid. Or really, you can get inside of it. And if you accept your hull really deteriorating down and your shields the same way, then it's essentially a free level skip, but you will have to be careful on the next level that shows up, because you don't have much durability. As for the song itself, yeah, it really is ominous. It gets some interesting beats here, but then it doesn't really amount to much. The payoff isn't satisfying. So yeah, Singular is actually pretty solid. I'd give it an A tier, above Collider and Super Lumen, but below Freefall because Freefall's intro first half is just too good to be beaten so far by any of the other songs. Now we have Terminus, and this may sound very familiar because it is kind of a rehash of Singular, at least the first few seconds of it at least. It does have some additional beats put into place to signify that this is a whole nother different song. And then, you know, it's a whole nother animal. This is where things build up. Definitely feeling the build-up. This is where the song's peak is at, boys. I like this breakdown there. Yeah, it's building up again. Admittedly, the second half of the song does get somewhat repetitive, but it still, again, gets interesting. And then it's another fade-off thing. So yeah, Terminus is very solid. I'd say this is probably the most thoroughly enjoyable song. It's not the best song overall, but it is one of the most thoroughly enjoyable ones so far. And for that, it also deserves S tier. Like, I'm really torn, because Freefall's first half is better, but the second half really falls flat compared to Terminus, which still has a pretty interesting second half. Now, admittedly, Terminus's first half is also better, but it's more consistent. And for that reason, I put it at S tier. Next up, we have another intro song, like another beginning boss theme. The first few beats are really good. I do kind of wish that and then we have these following segment where we have these weird crackling sounds, some bass drums, and I also like this part, but it is a bit repetitive considering how much of the song this occupies. Okay, there's some build up. It's definitely building up to something. It's also on some louder sound, louder music in the game. I actually like that there's now this breakdown and it's entering a different phase of the song. It's building up again. This is where the song really peaks at. It peaks at the end. This is another great boss song. It's a little bit on the short side. It's actually one of the shortest songs in the entire game, but it's short and sweet. Like, admittedly, the first half, the part right after the beginning isn't too great. It's still pretty good, but it's not the best. And then it escalates into epicness. And like the final parts of the song is actually the best, which is a first considering most of the times the weakest parts of the song are actually in the rear. And this time around, it's saving up the best for the last. And for that, I really gotta give it with props. I'll give it S tier as well. I'm not too sure honestly though, because it is a bit short. Well, I'd say I'll put it below Terminus because Terminus is more consistently good than Gigadon, but Gigadon is still a banger. Make no mistake. Next up, we have yet another banger. It does not waste any time getting interesting. Oh yeah. I almost feel bad for not pausing I almost feel bad for speaking over the song. It's got these different and interesting instruments on it, and it sounds rather interesting and unique compared to most other songs in the game. Okay, it's slowing down, going for a breakdown. Oh yeah, the synth music, the synth trance beats are really great. Once again, getting goosebumps. And then we're going for a fade out theme again. But at least with this version, it's actually a rather satisfying fade out. This absolutely deserves S tier. In fact, this is the best song in the game that I've ranked so far. Next up we have Aries. I really gotta love the beats in this one. It's building up as well. I gotta say the payoff was slightly disappointing because it's just more of the same beats but with slightly different tempo. It definitely feels like you really want to beat up someone with this music track. Like you really want to throw hands. Okay, it's switching paces now. Oh, not quite yet. Once again, the payoff was kind of disappointing. Like, it does get kind of groovy, which I like. It is building up once again. Definitely building up. So you got the initial, like... Now we come back full circle after skipping some parts of the song. Now we got this weird instrument which I don't really like. So this is basically the first few parts of the song. Honestly, the problem with Aries is it's way too repetitive. Like, there's some build-ups, but the payoffs are not very good. And instead of having distinguishable phases to the song, it's just more of the same beats repeating over and over again. And this is the reason why I gotta place Aries on C tier. It's just too repetitive for me, which really does suck because the beats are actually pretty good. And if there were like distinctive phases on the song, like Freefall, Terminus, or Helion, or even Gigadon has, it could have been an A tier song. But as is, it really has a lot holding it back. Next up though, it's a song that can totally compensate. And it's one of the best songs in the entire game. Oh yeah, it's definitely building up. I really like the initial beats as well. It also feels fast-paced, kind of like Super Lumen, but this time you're really fighting a fast-paced boss, which is very true for Seraph, because Seraph is pretty fast with its Celestial Lance phase. Oh, yes. The goosebumps are real. So the thing about Seraphim is, like, the first two thirds of the song are amazing. Like, especially the second third of the song, like 33% to 66% of the song is amazing stuff. It really picks up, especially during the 50% mark, and it really gets good. It like the part like this part especially. Like, this is amazing. Like, it sounds so unique and amazing. I really do not know how to describe the part, but it really is amazing. Unfortunately, the problem of Seraphim is the final third. Like, it's still pretty good, but it's not quite as good as the first two halves. First two thirds. And it's again like a fade-off thing again. But my goodness, Seraphim is another banger. And it also deserves S tier. No question. It's only below Helion because Helion is more consistently good. And it does actually compete with Seraphim in terms of quality. But come on, they two are really close neck and neck. Now we have something that's more peaceful. Parsec is the main menu's theme, and so it's really not fair for it to have, I don't think it's fair for people to expect some build-up and payoffs to happen like with other songs. This is supposed to be pretty calm, and it really does fulfill that pretty well. Like, it's very iconic to Nova Drift. Like, you should take Parsec out of Nova Drift, you would know that something has been tampered with the game. Like, it would be pretty obvious. And so, this thing also deserves A tier. Here. It's not the best song in the game, no doubt about it. It's definitely not the best song, but it absolutely fulfills its function well. It's a really good, like, relaxing song. Like, if you're taking a break from Nova Drift gameplay and just want to chill out in the menu, this song really does fit the job amazingly well. It does it perfectly, in my opinion. But because it does its job perfectly, it cannot rise beyond a normal menu theme. Now we have Rainseed. Yeah, this song is more interesting. Okay, it does actually have some build-up in it. And then it starts to get really ominous for some reason. I actually like Rainseed quite a lot. Enough to say that it does stand right alongside Parsec. But the thing with Rainseed is it's not quite... Honestly, I think they're interchangeable. Like, they're both pretty solid for their function in the game. I might actually place Rainseed above Parsec because it's more recognizable and it has more interesting stuff going on it. Especially like the final few parts, which sounded rather ominous actually. Now we have this weird song. And honestly, I've never heard this in-game. Now, I did ask the community about this song, Low Orbit, and it's apparently a theme that plays in the Nova Drift demo, or something like that, and frankly, I've never heard it in my Nova Drift gameplay. Right, that sounds funky, I'd say. It sounds rather interesting, but it doesn't really evolve into a different phase or something like that. Let's see how long it takes to evolve or get into a different phase. Like, the beats are kind of similar now. Okay, now it's getting really sinister. Now it's really getting strange. Like, this almost sounds alien compared to the other Nova Drift soundtracks. Like, I have been raving about Seraphim's parts being unique and stuff. Now this may actually take the cake. This may actually be the most unique song in the entire game. But I'm not too sure if it's necessarily good because, honestly, it does sound very repetitive. It may have some unique beats to it, but it is very repetitive. I will place it above these guys because of its uniqueness, but the repetitive really does hold it back, and it doesn't really have a satisfying conclusion or phases to the song as well. It's kind of like Ares, but better, I guess, because it does sound more unique. Ares, it sounds more traditional, and it honestly sounds even more boring, in my opinion at least. Don't sue me, because I know there are Ares fans out there. Next up, we have this honestly sounds like the theme that you would hear when the main characters of a movie enter a utopian city. Like, imagine if they got time traveled into the year 2070 and they encounter this utopian city. Now, obviously, this is just a movie. This is not supposed to be reality. I'm not expecting things out of 2070. But this is just a movie, okay? But yeah, in that movie, like, they find this futuristic city. Okay. little darker than before. Okay, so it's slowing down. It's vaguely trying to build up to something. It does take its sweet time trying to build up, which is a common criticism for the other songs as well. Oh yeah, this is definitely the best part of Chronos. Like, it really, like, those rapid beats were pretty cool though. I do like the synth tracks and drums. And then, like, this is where the song falls off and fades out. So Chronos does have that interesting bit around the second half, like the beginning of the second half, and that does, like, make it go past C tier, but I really do think it's not as good as Seraphim. Like, nowhere near as good as Seraphim. I'm sorry, boys, but I really gotta do this too. Poor Glaucus. And if it weren't for the beats, I would have ranked it in C tier as well. It does fit the theme of the boss being very elegant and majestic, but it really doesn't hold a candle to Seraphim. With this ranting over, we shall now move on to... This song is immediately recognizable for anyone who plays Wild Metamorphosis. And unlike regular Neverend, it immediately gets interesting. I have listened to this hundreds of times, and I still love it. Like, I can already imagine I'm in the upgrade menu and picking up some upgrades for my body gear, my shield, and my weapon. If I'm even going for a weapon, because there are obviously builds without weapons. Okay, it's transitioning into a different phase. Oh yeah, it's definitely getting interesting. It really is building up to something, isn't it? Oh, yes. I like that breakdown there. Unfortunately, though, the second half does suffer from being not as good as the first half, which is weird because the regular Never End, it actually had some interesting and somewhat sinister beats going around in the second half, and that really makes it a tough toss-up between Never End and Never End Waves. But I do think this version is superior just because I do play Wild Metamorphosis a lot more than non-wild. Enough for it to be A tier. Like, it's bottom of A tier, but it is A tier. Actually, I may actually prefer it over Super Lumen. But not above Collider, because the beat drop is just great on that song. Next up, we have Slow Burn Nova. So we're starting off in a decent note. Nothing's too great, but still pretty solid. It absolutely is gonna go into a different phase, isn't it now? It does like taunt you into like moving into a different phase when it's not quite there yet. There it is. Yeah, this is around the time when the song gets kind of good. And then it fades down as well, just like the majority of the other Nova Drift soundtracks. I actually don't mind this song. Like, obviously it's not an S tier song, but I still think it's pretty solid. Enough for it to be just below Chronos, I think, would be appropriate. Like, the second half is definitely where things pick up and get interesting. But I mean, there are definitely better songs than it in the game. Now we have Rubidium Core. Let's just skip to the interesting bits. Okay, there is some sinister stuff going around right now. That was an okay-ish breakdown there. Okay, it's once again building up. The tension is real. And then the song kind of devolves into sirens just flaring around, like police sirens, honestly. I'm mostly gonna skip this part because I don't really like the final few seconds of Rubidium Core. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised because when I heard it in game, I didn't really think too much about it because it just sounded like your regular old Nova Drift soundtrack. It's decent, but it didn't sound exceptional. But the more I listened to it, the more it actually grew on me that this isn't actually too bad. Having said that, I'm not too sure if it goes into B tier. Even if it did, it's a borderline B and C tier. It's somewhere between the two, honestly. But I do gotta give it credit. It does have some okay-ish beats. I didn't expect myself to put it on B tier of all things. I expected it to be straight up D tier, but it's actually not too bad. Like, I'm surprised myself. Next up we have... Oh yeah, that's another great beat drop. I'm not too sure which one has the better beat drop. If it's regular Collider or Collider Sync. Let's compare the two. Okay, and now we have Collider Synced. Okay, so the regular Collider has a more impactful drop, but the build-up on Collider Synced is better. And both of them have pretty good beat drums on the first few seconds of the song. So far, I vibe to this song very well. Dun, dun. So far, I actually think this is the better version. And it does kind of fall apart after the 75% mark. That is the one unfortunate downside of having Collider in your title. But otherwise, Collider Synced is actually, I'd say, an improvement over the original Collider. Enough that I will put it above Singular. I like the beat drums and the bassiness of the song. And it also arguably has a better build up to the bass drop, even if the bass drop isn't quite as impactful as the original Collider. Now we have Super Lumen Warped. I really like the build up on this one, because it's like building up your it's building up your engines and then going really fast. Let me compare that to the original Super Lumen. Yeah, I do kind of think that the original Super Lumen's build up isn't quite as strong, or quite as epic. It is starting to get a little repetitive, however. So the thing about Super Lumen Warped is it has like a better first half and an inferior second half compared to the regular Super Lumen. And it doesn't quite feel as fast as the regular Super Lumen either. Which means I'm not too sure, honestly. Like, the two are really neck and neck in this. Like, the first half definitely is superior, but the second half isn't as good. It's a tough decision. I'm really not sure about this. Honestly, I would probably give Warped the benefit because I do listen to it more often and I do like it in my gameplay. but it is very close, and the regular version is like really close to being just as good, if not better. And it really wouldn't take all too much convincing for me to put it above the warped version. Now we have a banger. This one's great. I like that payoff. I also like the instruments on this one. And now we enter this breakdown phase. But it's just 1 minute into the song. It's hardly over. We haven't even gone past the second half, so it's gonna build up. I will say it does take a bit too long to build right back up, but the 2,000 seconds following reaching. I'm having trouble pronouncing things again, but the 2,000 seconds after you reach the halfway mark of Blue Shift Centered is the peak of the song, undoubtedly. Like, there's no questioning it. It's amazing. And then it returns back to its normal beats and stuff. Okay, some interesting stuff going around over here. That was awesome. Blue Shift Centered is awesome. It is very much better than the regular Blue Shift. It definitely gets A tier. I'm not too sure if I want to put it on the S tier because there were some gaps in the song where it wasn't quite as strong. But it's really close to being S tier, that's for sure. I may actually put it on S tier, I'm not sure. It's definitely borderline A tier, S tier. Like, if it was just those 2,000 seconds of pure bliss, it would easily be S tier. However, there are some parts which isn't quite as strong. I am really having trouble choosing. I may actually put it on S tier. And maybe even above Gigadon. Just because the 2,000 seconds of delight is really delightful. And following Blue Shift is probably my favorite song in the entire game. Whenever I hear these beats, I know shit is about to go down. I accidentally tapped my computer. I'm legit slightly going up and down on my chair. It's that good. I do kind of wish that the song gets into its meat rather quickly, because it does take over a minute for it to really get great. Right now it still sounds good, but this is where good turns into excellent. Like, the song has some amazing beats. And you can very clearly sense it is building up to something amazing. Not just amazing, godlike. Oh yes, this build-up. The goosebumps are real. And this is the part where excellent turns into godlike. My god! The last few seconds were straight up godlike. That is probably the best sounds that Nova Drift has ever produced. The best sounds that Miles Tillman has ever produced, at least that I've seen of him. Those were straight up godlike. Like, the build-up was so amazing and the payoff was also equally amazing. Now, normally when it reaches this part of the song, I usually think, meh, whatever. But even I'm vibing to this song part right now. It's definitely not as good as the first half, but it's still actually not too bad. I like these vibes. Okay, it's starting to slow down, and it's not quite as good. And even though this is another case of a slow fade down, it's actually one of my favorite slow fade down endings of any song in Nova Drift. Like, the beats are actually kind of soothing and vibey, considering the action-packed awesomeness of the first half. What an amazing track. Recursor really is as good as I thought it was. Yeah, I'm putting it above Helion. Don't sue me. It's better than Helion for me, at least. Even if the second half isn't quite as good, I think those two, that single dozen seconds of absolute bliss really does put it at the top of S tier. And so far, the new best song in Nova Drift. The ones that I've ranked, at least. It completely eclipses even Blue Shift's 24 seconds of epic bliss. And my god, the beats are awesome. Like, obviously it's got some structural issues and it's not quite as consistently good as the others, but my god, its highs make it glorious and amazing. And not just amazing, godlike in my eyes. To make things even better, the following song is also a banger. And fair warning, if you've not encountered the two new bosses, this is their music. With that being said, if you've heeded my spoiler warning or you've actually fought these guys before, here they go. We got the build up. Getting kind of sinister there. This actually has some fairly sinister vibes. It's not to the same level as Freefall, but it is pretty sinister and dark. Okay, it's starting to get kind of uplifting. I swear I heard this kind of tempo on a space documentary called Alien Planet. It sounded kind of similar to that, actually. The goosebumps are here again. I think it's building up to something now. So the build-up is amazing and the change in pace is really cool, but the next phase, honestly, I hate to say this, but it's not quite as good. Like, here it sounds kind of plain, and it feels like a lot of pressure has been taken off you. I do like the occasional instruments going on, and now it's switching tracks again. Yeah, I like these dark crackling sounds. Okay, now I kind of vibe again. Now it sounds kind of uplifting, actually. It actually sounds like one of those old school... have you ever heard of the GBA Advance? Like, Game Boy Advance? It kind of sounds like that. Musically, at least. It's not completely similar, but it vaguely resembles. And then it's another fade down. Hyper Radiant is another banger, and another immediate S tier. With that being said, this is a bit controversial, but I don't think it's quite as good as... I don't think it's actually better than Helion, even though a lot of you think it is. The reason for that being, it's not as consistently as good. Some of his eyes are actually better than Helion's eyes. Like, come on, the mix-up, the battling themes of the dark... Okay, so there's like this struggle between the uplifting vibes and the dark, sinister vibes, and they actually meld together very well on this track. And it makes it very interesting, but the thing that's really holding this back from being perfect is, like, the transition between the two phases, the two interesting phases, is kind of plain. And I kind of wish it wasn't as plain. If it didn't have that issue, it would immediately be better than Helion. And be right alongside the Recursor for all I care. Next up we have Minima. Kind of a mediocre bass drop. Fun fact, this is actually the music that's used in their recent trailer. Okay, it's now entering a breakdown. I like those instruments there. It does sound way too uplifting here. Now we have a sudden change in tempo and it sounds a bit more sinister. The heroic vibe is trying to fight the dark vibes again. They're like alternating like a helix. Definitely sensing a build up here. Okay, this is really sad, because the build-up was really good, actually. And then the payoff is just... what? It doesn't exist. The payoff doesn't exist. And that is the reason why Minima is really held back in terms of being good. In terms of being S tier. It really was so close. But... the payoff really did make it fall off to A tier. Along with some other issues, like sometimes the song being way too upbeat and heroic. It just sounded like you're winning and then suddenly the tide turns and then it's all dark again. With that being said, it's still a banger. Next up we have the first few seconds of No Graph are very mysterious, but not in a sinister way like Freefall. And I actually kind of like it. I actually kind of dig the first few seconds of No Graph. And then it turns into a regular-ish Nova Drift soundtrack. So far, it doesn't sound too remarkable, honestly. I'm skipping out some parts. Okay, this is where the build-up shows up. It's like struggling to get to a different phase. Now I think it's getting into that different phase. It really does take its sweet time to actually move somewhere. And so far it still sounds kind of repetitive. Okay, so we're once again building up. But I really gotta be honest, like, after so many fake outs, I am starting to get tired of this. Okay, now it's actually getting okay. Just as I was about to praise the song, it once again somewhat disappoints me. And then it inexplicably returns back into action. Honestly, No Graph isn't too solid. I'm sorry to say this, but it really misses the mark. It's probably the weakest link in the Nova Drift soundtrack so far. I really didn't want to say this, but it doesn't sound too special, honestly. It's filler track, honestly. It's probably one of the filler tracks in Nova Drift. Which is really sad to say, considering many of the other tracks have a lot of merit and are actually pretty cool to listen to, even if they have their own flaws. This, on the other hand, the first few seconds of parallelism is amazing. It really feels like you're about to enter into this grand, amazing, exciting world of Nova Drift. Oh yes. This is what Nova Drift is about. I also really like this breakdown part. I will say this breakdown part lasts a bit too long. Oh yeah, it's building up once again. And this is where the song kind of ends, and then it's another fade out ending of a song. Parallelism, regular parallelism is really great. I really do think it also deserves A tier. Above Minima, actually. Because, like, the final third of the song has that iconic theme track, and it's just so iconic to Nova Drift. Like, if you ask a veteran Nova Drift player about one of the most iconic tunes of Nova Drift, this would probably be one of the first results. That being said, the thing that's holding it back from S tier is the rather unremarkable middle part of the song. It's still okay, but it's not as good as it could have been. If that part of the song was also more interesting. Next up, we move to its wild version counterpart, Parallelism Freed. Now, immediately, I do not like the intro part as much. Like, it's not as good, obviously. It also takes like a full 40 seconds for things to start to get interesting. I actually weirdly like this build-up. I mean, the beats are kind of okay, but it's rather obvious that this song is not as good as the original Parallelism. And it's another fade out. Yeah. While the original Parallelism was amazing, this song is nice. It's nice. I would put it around here, I guess. Now we're really running into the final 4 songs of the game. And this one is obviously a banger. The community favorite, Centerless. Like, at first, the intro of the song really sounds amazing. It sounds like you're also entering this grand adventure of Nova Drift. And then after 30 seconds, you realize it's overstayed its welcome. And by 1 minute, you really think it's overstayed its welcome. And even though the track attempts to spice things up, it's not enough. It does somewhat switch tempos at 1:30, like 1 minute and a half. But overall, I do think it's a little repetitive for such a well-renowned song of the Nova Drift fandom. Now it gets great. After frankly a rather overrated first half of the song, now we're going to get into the real meat of the song. It also takes a fair bit to build up once again. Okay, now the build up is real. Oh yes. This is what the community of the game really likes. Well, I have a controversial opinion. Centerless is not perfect. The first half, dare I say, is overrated. The final third of the song, however, really is good. It really is amazing. It really does deserve S tier. But even though it deserves S tier, I don't think it's quite up there with Freefall, Seraphim, Hyperradian, Helion, and Recursor. I'm sorry, boys, but I really have my own opinions, and Centerless is still amazing with that final third, but I actually expected way more epicness to come out of this song. Now we have this song, Infinitum Genesis. It doesn't really have any beats to it yet. It's just hyping up. Those scratchy sounds are actually kind of cool. Okay, I think I'm approaching the point where the song peaks. This is where it actually gets kind of good. Yeah, that was the peak of the song. It's decent, it's actually pretty good, but if that's the peak of the song, then the rest of the song is somewhat underwhelming. Yeah. Infinitum Genesis is a C tier again. I'm gonna put it around I'm gonna put it here, honestly. It's right alongside No Grav and right alongside No Grav and Rubidium for being rather unremarkable. And another ironic thing is the following song, Infinitum, Regular Infinitum, is actually the longest song in the entirety of Nova Drift. For the moment at least. There may be future tracks which are even longer, but this one is so far the longest. And meanwhile, Infinitum Genesis is actually one of the shortest tracks, at less than 2.5 minutes, or 2 minutes 30 seconds. This immediately sounds a lot better. This already sounds grand, like parallelism freed and centerless. The goosebumps are here again. It's kind of like a player's theme, actually. Like, this is like the theme of the Protean, which is the ship that you control, the player's ship. It's almost like if Nova Drift had a theme for that ship, it would be the beginning parts of Infinitum. It's building up. The synth beats are also really cool. Now we've entered a different phase of the game. And this is pretty action-packed, it's pretty fast-paced. It's subtly transitioning again. Yeah, this is where the transitioning is really starting to take hold. I really like that crossfade there. It's almost ready to metamorphosis into another phase. And just in time, as I said, it switched gears. I'm really not too sure about those instruments there, but whatever. Okay, now it's slowing down and entering this breakdown phase, I guess. Okay, this is the part where the song kind of falls off. It gets kind of repetitive and it's just quiet. And this part actually lasts for quite a long time. It's just some subtle sounds, and honestly I kinda wish it was populated with more tunes and more phases. So around the 4-minute mark is where things quieten down. And the worst part is, it goes for well over a minute. And it takes almost 2 minutes for things to start to get interesting once again. With that being said, this is pretty much the player's theme playing once again. It's like the song is doing a send-off as you're about to continue your journey out into space. And then it's another fade off. So, the majority of Infinitum is amazing. And the thing that I really like about it is that it has distinct, clear phases that I really like. Like, most of the phases are really good, but there was like almost 2 minutes of pretty much filler sound, and it didn't really serve a purpose, which is why it's not the best song. With that being said, it is still amazing. I'm really torn on whether it should be better than Centerless or worse than Centerless. I'd say better because the player's theme, motif, and such are really great. And it does have more good parts in it than Centerless, even if Centerless does also have some good parts in it. And this is it, the final song in Nova Drift. At least in the Nova Drift soundtrack list. It's all over. Despite having a great run, you died to something. Since this is a game over theme, it doesn't have any build-up or breakdowns or stuff that you'd find in more conventional music. It's just some synthwave tracks just repeating over and over again, but I like it a lot. And it is very distinct to Nova Drift. Like, if this was also taken out of Nova Drift, you know the game was tampered with. Just like with Parsec and Rainseed. And so for that, I am also going to keep it between the two. And there you have it, the Nova Drift tier list. And if I'm gonna be honest, I really do think that the D tier and E tier and F tier are pretty much decorations. At least for me, because your opinion may be a lot different from mine, and there may actually be songs that you don't like a lot, and you may actually place them on E tier or D tier. Please no F tier. Now, if I really want to reshuffle things, I may actually add like sub-tiers. So basically, I add a row below, and let's just call it A, low A. Like, this is a subcategory. And I can add another category that is above it, and I can add high A tier. And if I really wanted to, I could just branch them off like this, this, and this. But honestly, I think the previous system was better. Like, see, I'm not really sure. I'm just gonna keep it like this. Let me delete these rows real quick. Oh no. Well, I'm gonna have to do the funny re-ranking thing again. Accidents happen to the best of us. I'm gonna delete this row. But yeah, Recursor was the best. Then there was Helion, Hyperradian, Seraphim, Freefall, Infinitum, Centerless, Terminus, and yeah. I think this was pretty much the ranking that I had before. There may have been some changes, but I think it's decent enough. And so there you have it. This is my tier list of all of the Nova Drift soundtracks. My name is Excalibur Heavy Battlecruiser, and as always, may the forks be with you all.